One evening, Ikena came home after his day's work and informed his wife Ugochi that he was no longer interested in his marriage with her and would be leaving for the big city the following day. Those words were like a dagger stab to Ugochi's heart. Once upon a time, in a village far east, there lived an amazing woman known as Ugochi. Ugochi was known for her very hardworking nature and great beauty. Ugochi was married to a man known as Ikena, who was a very hardworking farmer. Ugochi and her husband Ikena worked their large farm day and night together to ensure that they and their children had a good life. Ugochi and Ikena lived a very simple but fulfilling life in their village. They were each other's confidants, friends, and partners in every sense. Many people secretly dreamt of Ugochi and her husband's type of love and equally envied them. Ugochi and her husband were a beacon of hope and inspiration for everyone who longed for true love in their lives. One fateful day, a very rich woman who was from their village but lives in the big city visited their village to purchase some lands. The rich woman's name is Olamma. Olamma was a walking goddess. Her beauty was next to none. Olamma lost her husband at an early stage of her marriage and she left the village afterwards, only to return back a few years later with so much wealth. Olamma's assets were so much that many people whispered and always wondered what type of work she does in the city that made her so rich. Olamma wanted to plant some things on some of her newly purchased lands, so she contracted Ikena, Ugochi's husband, to do the work for her on her farmlands. Ikena was so happy to take up the job as Olamma was known to be a very generous woman who pays heavily for works done for her whenever she returns to the village. A few days later, after Ikena had commenced work on Olamma's farmland, Olamma started showing up personally at the farmland to inspect what Ikena was doing. Whenever Olamma comes for inspection on her farmland, she would sit down and start telling Ikena many beautiful stories about the city and the unimaginable wealth and luxury lifestyle in the big city. These stories mesmerized Ikena a lot. Not long after, Ikena started to feel really drawn to Olamma in ways he could not explain. Every evening, whenever Ikena returned to his home, he would sit outside his hut alone and start replaying all the beautiful stories about the city Olamma had told him at the farm that very day. Olamma's stories stirred something deep within Ikena that made Ikena start to realize he wanted more from life than just the simple life he was living with his wife Ugochi in their village. Though Ikena loved his wife Ugochi a lot, he soon began to feel restless and dissatisfied with his life with her in the village. He was deeply convinced that he deserved that good life the city had to offer. Ugochi, who was a very smart and wise woman, was starting to notice the changes in her husband Ikena. Ikena was becoming very distant and was always lost in his thoughts. Those lights in Ikena's eyes that made Ugochi feel so shy all the time and happy were starting to fade away. Ugochi immediately confronted her husband Ikena with her observations, but Ikena brushed her off, assuring her that everything was fine. Ugochi, however, knew better, as she could feel the growing distance between them, and that broke her heart so much. One evening, Ikena came home after his day's work and informed his wife Ugochi that he was no longer interested in his marriage with her and would be leaving for the big city the following day. Those words were like a dagger stab to Ugochi's heart. Ugochi pleaded with Ikena to reconsider his decisions, but Ikena's heart was hardened. Ugochi reminded Ikena of their love and the life they have shared and built together for years. But Ikena's mind was made up. Ugochi had no option than to let Ikena be, while she clung onto her little children who were starting to cry with her. Ikena, blinded by his burning desires for a new and interesting life in the city and his deep lust for Olama's beauty, quickly walked away from his family with his luggages for Olama's house, regardless of the pouring tears from the faces of his wife and children. Very early the next day, Ikena and Olama left their village together for the city. The sight of the city was a wonder to Ikena as he stared in disbelief at the towering city buildings as they drove into town. The city was everything Olama painted its beauty to be. As the days went by, Ikena was intoxicated by the energy of the city and all the glamours of life he suddenly found himself in. Olama threw wealth on Ikena, and with her love and charm, Olama held Ikena so close to her bosom. Soon, Ikena's life became almost everything he had ever dreamt of. He was wining and dining with the high-class members of the city and attending lavish parties. As the days turned into weeks and many months had passed by, the excitement of the city life soon started to wear off Ikena's eyes. Not only was Ikena starting to realize that he was yet to make any reasonable money he could call his own in the city, despite the luxuries surrounding him, because he was not educated for a white-collar job. He was also Olama's official errand boy. The things that once thrilled Ikena about the city started to feel very empty. Ikena's sense of independence and relevance on earth were all a thing of the past now. Ikena was gradually starting to miss the simplicity and sincerity of the life in his village, as many people in the city were so dubious and lived very fake lives. In Ikena's silent moments, he would cry bitterly and painfully for Ugochi's love. His heart missed his wife Ugochi so much, and for the first time in 2 years, Ikena found himself worrying over what happened to his beautiful family, especially his wife Ugochi, after he left them in their pool of tears the night he informed them that he was leaving. Back in the village, Ugochi's life was a very big struggle. Being both father and mother to their little kids and working on their farm all by herself was too much burden for her. Ugochi sometimes broke down in tears amidst her sufferings, as the loss of the beautiful relationship she shared with Ikena affected her so much. The villagers who once admired the love Ugochi shared with her husband Ikena now gossiped about her and how she was rejected and abandoned for the rich woman from the city. This made Ugochi withdraw herself from a lot of social activities in her village because of shame. Ugochi struggled a lot with her sense of identity and became so pale looking because of the emotional turmoil and stress she was passing through. Some few good people in their village who pitied Ugochi tried cheering her up whenever they came across her. This sort of comforted Ugochi and helped her to stay strong and resilient despite the hardships. Ugochi channeled all her pains into working hard on her farm. She also found great strength and solace in the love she shared with her children. Meanwhile, life in the city with Olamma was equally starting to become immensely painful for Ikena. Ikena was getting so sad and very depressed with life. Surprisingly, Olamma, who was always so busy with either work, lavish parties, or networking with the upper class, didn't even notice a single change in Ikena's moods. Olamma rather continued to boss Ikena around as if Ikena were her official houseboy. All Ikena wanted was to return back to the tranquility of his village where he last knew peace 2 years ago. Ikena longed so much for his wife Ugochi's warm embrace, and he was all troubled over the fact that Ugochi may have moved on with another man, going by how he left her. Ikena had taken his time to realize how selfish he was for abandoning Ugochi, his wife, who was the one person on earth he knew genuinely loved him, just because of his lustful desires and ambitions. One fateful day, Ikena snuck his luggages off Olamma's home when Olamma wasn't around and decided to return back to his village as he was tired and wanted to go home. Ikena's journey back to the village was long and filled with the weight of his regrets and uncertainty of what awaited him back in the village. When Ikena arrived his village, the village was much the same as he had left it. The fields were still lush and green. Everyone was going about their daily lives. There was palpable tension as Ikena walked through the village. The whispers of his betrayal followed him like a shadow. This made Ikena panic, and rather than going to his home, he went to his wife Ugochi's mother's place. The moment Ugochi's mother saw Ikena walking into her home, she was enveloped in anger and she started scolding Ikena. Ikena knelt down and started pleading with his mother-in-law to forgive him and help him beg her daughter Ugochi to forgive him as well and accept him back. After much pleadings, Ugochi's mother had no option than to forgive Ikena and also follow Ikena to his home to beg her daughter Ugochi on Ikena's behalf. One look at Ikena and Ugochi froze where she was walking on her farmland. Her facial expressions were unreadable as she was struggling with mixed emotions at the sight of Ikena, her husband. For a moment, everyone stood in silence. Ugochi dropped her farm tools in her hands, ran into her mother's arms, and started weeping in pains. Ugochi's mother held on to Ugochi while Ikena went on his knees with tears in his eyes, pleading for Ugochi's forgiveness. Ugochi's mom started to plead with Ugochi alongside Ikena to forgive Ikena. Ugochi pulled herself together and with eyes filled with a mixture of pain and resolve, said softly, Ikena, when you left me and our children, you broke my heart into a million pieces. I have struggled every day in shame and anguish since then, wondering where I went wrong to deserve the way you abandoned me. Forgiving you will not be easy, and trusting you again will take time to rebuild. I, however, believe in second chances. I know what we shared together before, and if truly you are repentant and sorry, my heart never stopped loving you, my love. Welcome back home. Ikenna felt a glimmer of hope and quickly stuttered, I promise you, Ugochi, that I will work very hard to earn back your forgiveness. I will prove to you that I am genuinely repentant and committed to making things right between us again. Ugochi and Ikena hugged each other so tightly. Ikena thanked his mother-in-law so much for helping him make the reconciliation process with his wife Ugochi a little bit easier for him. Ikena equally asked for forgiveness from his children when they got home, and they all lived happily ever after. The love between Ugochi and Ikena became even stronger than it ever was. The moral of this story is that contentment in life is a great virtue, as most times the grass is not always greener on the other side. Secondly, no human in this life is above temptation, as life is an ocean of uncertainties for everyone. Lastly, true love will always win. It doesn't matter what happens in between, as many waters cannot quench love. Thank you for watching.